So I decided to watch the entirety of season two, and wow, I mean, so technically, I mean, for one thing, obviously it's not the entirety of season two, it's just the first half of season two. Season three is, in fact, season two, part two. But even still, just as a season on its own, like, wow, what a big step up from season one. Like, really, in terms of like characterization, I would say every character, like, almost apart from no, actually, I would say every character, including Glimmer, all of them were kind of pushed forward really well. Like Catra, like she was fully embracing being evil, but even then, they still didn't drop the idea of like her being a sympathetic villain. What else? You got to see the Frozen Queen being, well, the little kid Frozen Queen being acting like a little kid, and Glimmer kind of having to be more mature in the first episode. You got to see a lot of different like relationships, like Scorpio and Catra's relationship. You got to see Hordak and Trappy, I think her name is. You got to see them really like you got to see more scenes of them together and more scenes of them growing as like friends and stuff. Um, yeah, I mean it's kind of hard to describe all at once, but like every episode, like the episode where they were planning the battle was fucking hilarious. It was so funny. It was just funny watching all of these different princesses have completely different insane ideas on like how to like do this like invasion, and then they managed to like incorporate all of their ideas. That was funny. The backstory on Shadow Weaver was fantastic. I loved how not only did it like it explained, like you had that brief line in season one, but this really gave us backstory on who Shadow Weaver like used to be, how she used to be this like you know like hero essentially called Light Spinner, and like Glimmer's father was like her apprentice, and like you got to see a decent side to her. And then you got to see how she became corrupted, but even at the end, you saw that she still had a good side when she adopted Adora. But then they, at the end of it, they just revealed that she was just like attempting to win Catra over, essentially. Like at the end, like she pretends to be quite nice to her, but then you realize nope, she was just manipulating her again, and Catra actually fell for it this time. Um, yeah, I really, yeah, this and in the final episode, all the stuff that's done with like Bo is really good because Bo so far hadn't received a ton of development, but this one, like it gave you the reveal. Like he met his two fathers. You found out that like he actually like he's been keeping from his family that he wants to be a fighter and a soldier and stuff. But you just yeah, it's really well done. It gave him a lot of development. Yeah, I would even say that the storytelling's improved a bit. Like there are less cliches this season than there were in the previous season, and it's all very good. Like it's genuinely, yeah. I would say that this season was very strong. I'm gonna start watching season three as soon as I can. But yeah, I really enjoyed the season overall. Oh, how many like times can I say wow? Just what an emotionally draining season. I mean, essentially, so what was quite good about this season is that although technically it is the second half of season two, it did feel like its own self-contained story. Um, Especially with like like how it slowly went from like Shadow Weaver coming in to the castle to just this insane story that it became. I mean, it still had the focus on character development, but this is really the season where this show it fully like embraced its story, and it went really complex. Like in the last two episodes, I was having some trouble following it, but I did manage to keep up with it. Um, it was really like emotionally intense, but it was also just great. Like again, seeing these character changes, like seeing how Angela ended her character arc by finally like committing an act of bravery and like sacrificing herself. Uh, poor Glimmer, she now doesn't have any parents. I mean, like you saw that, but you also had you had the further characterization of Adora finding out about her past. Um, you had a lot of other different things. I mean, it was like great development for Catra as well. How she it was very much like, I mean, this season like cemented her as a villain, but um, despite that, it was cool to see the possibility of like, how things could have been, like how things could, like in the fifth episode where you're seeing this alternate timeline. It's like, like this is us seeing how it could have been. But it ultimately kind of just it emphasizes the fact that like again, Catra is just so messed up, and this series as a whole just seems to be about like, parental figures or figures in power and how they impact the people that they abuse, and how those who get abused are permanently affected by their abuse, and how they then become like their abusers. And Adora is the only one who's broken that cycle. Um, it's really about what else is it about? It's also just about like, like about how much Catra like really resented Adora as well. Just like she just wants her to lose at the end of the day. I don't know if that's going to change in season four, but right now it's like she's just so focused on not having Adora get the last word, on just being right, on just being in control, that it just yeah results in her character like just becoming worse and worse. But I mean, it was also great. So, like the first half of the season was great. It was cool seeing not only the Hunter character, but also just seeing the amount like how Catra did again had that brief moment of like happiness where she conquered the desert gang essentially, and how she rose to power in some way. I loved seeing that. I love seeing Hordock and how you found out that like he was just a clone the entire time of the real Hordock Prime. He was imperfect, and similarly to Shadow Weaver, similarly to Catra, he just wanted to please his master. He wanted to like please his brother or parent or something. And yeah, it was great seeing that. A lot of great stuff was done. I mean, there were some flaws, but they overall didn't affect my investment. I was very, very invested in this season. I was invested in seeing where it was going. I was invested in seeing like what was going to happen next in the story. So yeah, really, I really seriously hope that this quality continues. Like seriously, if the next two seasons of the show aren't good, then I'm gonna be pissed. Well, so season four, once again, was a massive, massive ride. I mean, I think it would be best to just break it down into like four categories of like the four most important things that happened in this season. So first of all, it was amazing that we got to see a lot more of the princesses than we had in previous seasons. Like initially at the beginning of the season, it felt much more like an ensemble piece, because in each episode we were getting to see all of the different princesses, and we were seeing different sides to them, and that was great to see. I loved the murder mystery one. I loved the desert one, um, and yeah, like it was really like I would say that was it fixed a flaw of previous seasons. You can argue is that the princesses themselves didn't get a lot of development or screen time to themselves, but I loved what they did with Glimmer this season. I actually found her storyline to be, I mean, arguably the most complex, because like she doesn't go down the path of villainy, but she does become somewhat corrupted, and she becomes not only a lot more like manipulative, but also a lot more like extreme, like with good intentions, but still extreme. And the payoff that they had in regards to Mika, her dad being back, was great, and the ultimate like resolution of this season was this like weapon that is supposed to just wipe out all life in the universe. And I thought that that was like not it made for arguably an even more intense climax than season three. Um, I found that to be really, really excellent. Like the way it was handled, especially because it really ruthlessly deconstructed, what. So yeah, I mean, I loved how much it kind of it took the whole like standard setup of the chosen hero is supposed to unite all of the princesses and like save the world. It kind of showed that like the people that were doing that were arguably also villains themselves. Like the old ones were villains, and um, it was really great to then see how the season ended with She-Ra basically, well, with Adora basically rejecting this She-Ra persona by destroying this sword. Because it kind of shows you that like, this that her destiny is chosen. It's not enforced upon herself. It's chosen by her, which is, in my opinion, is what all great heroes. It is what like kind of binds a lot of great heroes together, and it's what they should be. It's like they shouldn't. Okay, I'll try and make this quick. So yeah, it's what makes all great heroes. A hero that chooses to be heroic rather than a hero that is just told to be, you know. Um, but arguably the most important aspect of this season was what they did with Hordak and Catra. So they revealed that Hordak was just a clone essentially of this Hordak that exists in another dimension. Um, and then what they revealed ultimately, or then what they showed was like how what is it? Oh yeah, how Catra, they showed from the beginning how she was just the villain. Like she basically became the head villain of the show, like next to Hordak. But as the season went onwards, you just saw how miserable she was, how she was like on the verge of a nervous breakdown, how she drove Scorpia, arguably her only friend, away, and how ultimately then this new character called Double Trouble, they basically tell, like at the end of the season, they basically tell her that the entire time she's just been blaming everybody but herself. Like she's been doing terrible things, and she's just been excusing it by blaming other people, you know. And I found that to be really brilliant, especially because like Catra is like a lot of abuse victims, but she's also like a lot of abusers as well. Like she just can't take responsibility for anything bad that she does. And it really set the stage well for what will probably happen in the next season, which will probably most likely be her redemption. I'm guessing she'll redeem herself. I hope that she does. But she'll have to work very hard at it. The state that she is left in at the end is like she's with Princess Glimmer or Queen Glimmer, or like on Hordak Prime's spaceship, because the planet has been taken to the main universe, so therefore, so yeah, they encounter each other. Hordak, the clone, gets just, I'm guessing he's gonna get like mind wiped or something. But the stage is set for Adora to find them, with all of her other friends to find them. But yeah, it's a very strong cliffhanger, and I hope that season five is a really good payoff. In terms of flaws, again, I did feel like the story could get a bit complicated sometimes. Like it was a bit hard to keep track of, but but because I stuck with it, I was ultimately able to get what was going on. And what else? Some episodes were stronger than others. But yeah, yeah, again, this show, I mean, I st So I just finished watching season five, and wow, that like not only is it the best season of She-Ra easily, but it's one of the strongest final seasons I've seen in a very long time. I haven't watched a lot of TV lately, but in regards to just being a conclusive season, I would call that almost perfect. Like the one flaw I have, and I understand that like the creator of the show, she said why, or she said that this was intentional. The one thing we didn't get was an epilogue, but like it just sort of ended directly after the conflict is finished, and it would have been cool to just have maybe extra episode, extra 5 minutes, just seeing what the characters do. But at the same time, though, the ending was so strong that in some respects it's like that's almost a compliment, isn't it? That you want it to continue. And that brief future flash that we did have is, I mean, obviously it's just of four of the main characters, but it's a sign of like what they've ultimately won, like the future that they now have. And I just loved it. What they did with Catra this season and Adora was amazing. Like, um, the emotional depths that they took both characters to were amazing. Adora is genuinely speaking like she's a pure hero, but she's one of the strongest pure heroes that I've seen, in the sense that like she's not necessarily a fundamentally flawed character. She's like a perfect good person. But in my opinion, it's kind of how to do a character like that well, where you don't need to introduce a bunch of flaws, but you can kind of show how that character struggles, but yet how their love and decency is ultimately what like saves humanity essentially, or saves the conflict. Yeah, the way that they did Catra's redemption arc was so perfect, like episode by episode, how they did it. It was a season that had me like on the verge of tears at least like 5 times, it was really emotional and emotionally satisfying as well. It was really like it was really beautiful, but it was also just like it just brought things to such a good close. Like the closure we got with like, Hordak, like he had his memories raised, but then in some respects he's now set on the path for redemption, especially because of his relationship with Entrapta. Uh, the stuff that they did with Mika was really damn good, like how they kind of delayed the reunion between him and Glimmer, but they ultimately had him and Glimmer, well, they had Glimmer save her father, and that was perfect. Um, what they did with all of the side characters was really good. I loved the direction that they took Scorpia and how they like in many respects they like they had her become one of the good guys, but they also had her like again proved like what decent character she was, especially in that she was willing to forgive Catra just based on the basis of an apology. But then again, you could say that about Dora as well. Yeah, I loved that. I thought the season was like it was truly epic and scary as well. Like the horror scenes were all done really excellently. Horde, yeah, I forgot what I was saying, but I remember like, oh yeah, actually, I liked Hordak Prime as a villain. I liked how just pure evil he was, but I also liked like how much they really emphasized that, through his methods, the fact that, compared to all of the other characters who simply desire respect from a higher being, like the villains specifically who desire respect from like higher being, or a person, or like or they simply want to like conquer, like this guy like Hordak Prime. Essentially, all he wants to do is he just wants to destroy Etheria, and he just wants to do that through assimilation and then through using the uh like Heart of Entrapia, like using it in a bad way, using it to just for pure destruction. But I liked how much of like he was like a cult leader in many respects, especially in how he like brainwashed his subjects, how he demanded loyalty. And I loved the fact that regular Hordak defeated him by acknowledging that he was his own person and that like he deserved respect because of all that he accomplished. Um, and yeah, the season overall was very much about love versus hate. Like love was the redeeming factor in a lot of this brainwashing stuff, but it was also essentially the thing that defeated Hordak Prime, which was the Catra and Adora. Their love for each other was ultimately what like basically destroyed him. And yeah, that was like, I mean, I knew that the fact the whole Catradora stuff that was spoiled for me before the show began. So the whole time I knew that that was coming, but I didn't know like the steps that it was going to take to get to that point. But I loved how it ended, for the two of them. The two of them absolutely deserve each other. Yeah, I mean, yeah, to be honest, easily the best season of the show, and concludes it on a very, very strong note. Again, there are things like an extra episode would have been kind of nice, just to have some, just to wrap up certain things, like especially to give signs that Hordak, the regular Hordak, is actually going to be on the path of redemption, like, because I mean, he did help to redeem himself, but hopefully he actually commits to it. I loved what they did with Weaver this season, because at first she wasn't appearing that much, but then ultimately she sacrificed herself in the end because she kind of knew that she wasn't really a good person. She knew that she was too far gone, but she just wanted to make it better for her like surrogate daughters, essentially, and for the rest of the universe, basically. I really, yeah, I thought it was an incredibly emotional, very strong final season. Okay, so I heard somebody online say that Catra's development, or well, Catra's like redemption arc was rushed. Did we see the same fucking season? She spent the entire fucking season working for it. She spent the entire season atoning. She spent the entire season being, well, not the entire season being on the good guy's side. I mean, at first she wasn't, but then, like, she spent the entire season basically doing everything she could to help them, to basically to become a better person. And yeah, sure, she was showing signs of struggling, but she didn't just instantly become a pure selfless hero or anything. Like she worked at it, and then at the end, like the act of redemption was her saying "I love you" to Adora. Like that was the final note of her redemption. That was the final thing that made a character who in the previous seasons had been a villain. It's what made her ultimately redeemable. Well, she was redeemable, you could argue, all throughout the show, but this was the moment where she like fully redeemed herself. Like no trace of the old Catra is gone. Now we have a new Catra who is much, much better. Who is much more, who is much more. You could argue. You could argue pure, but you could also argue a lot less like damaged. A lot less um like a lot more loving, and a lot more like she's now gotten over it, essentially. Like in some respects she has kind of gotten over her previous issues, and she is now capable of being a better person. But I don't really get where that complaint could come from. I mean, yeah, sure, like it didn't take much to get Scorpia to forgive her, but Scorpia was a very forgiving person anyway. Like she'd just be willing to see Catra genuinely on the side of good and doing good. Um, I mean, and you could argue that maybe she didn't really see that. But I think just from like even well, it showed how like even when she was possessed, she could still like snap out of that brainwashing. So she clearly saw Catra, and she clearly saw that Catra was trying to like apologize to her. So therefore, and seeing that Catra was fighting against her as well, like is it like you wake up and you realize, oh yeah, she was on the side of good ultimately. Um, but I was happy to see that. But yeah, I mean, in general, I mean, the show deals with like redemption in many different facets, and in no way would I say that any of these arcs were rushed. It's not they didn't just like breeze through them. I mean, sure, in episode three, Catra did very suddenly decide, you know, to like save Glimmer and then send out that apology to Adora. But it makes like she'd been struggling with it for so long, and she just decided like in that moment like fuck, I have to do this. Like she, for all she knows, after she did it, like she could have died. Like, and it's like, would you rather just continue living as her enemy, or would you rather try and go out making her life better? Like, and it is true to say that like this whole time Catra did truly love Adora, but she was just like she just thought that Adora abandoned her, or she just was always under that mistaken impression that Adora never cared about her or didn't or stopped caring about her, you know. But yeah, in no way did I think that was rushed. In no way did I think that was in any way poorly handled. I mean, it's not 100% perfectly handled, but it is. I'd say it's at least a good 90%. I would say, yeah. Catch Dora forever.